Today we celebrate the 5th anniversary of SCOOB. This story it was released on home demand on May 15, 2020. So the story begins with Scooby-Doo has met a boy named young Norville Shaggy Rogers, and later they became best friends. And later that Halloween night, he met Fred Jones, Daphne Blake, and Velma Dinkley, and they managed to go to the haunted house to retrieve their candy before the ghost come. But unfortunately, the ghost about to scare them away. And Fred and Daphne bravely fought back and revealed the ghost's true identity was none other than Mr. Rigby. And later, he was arrested for his crimes by stealing all these items from the store. And this was their first mystery to solve. And that's how Shaggy, Scooby, Fred, Velma, and Daphne became mystery solvers. As the years went by, they became teenagers, and Fred managed to turn Mystery Inc. into a real business. When Simon Cowell arrived, they were impressive with Fred, Velma, and Daphne's career as mystery solvers. Except Shaggy and Scooby. Because they cannot count with friendship, people change to any of them putting their lives at stake. Friendship won't save the day, which heartbreaks Shaggy and Scooby. And then they leave the restaurant, and Fred, Velma, and Daphne telling them to come back because he didn't mean it. But it was too late. And Shaggy and Scooby quit Mystery Inc. for good. Later that night at the bowling alley, they ended up being chased by the killer robots named the Rodents, and they escaped to the bowling alley, find a way out, but they found the light beam and beamed them up into the ship called the Falcon Fury, and led by a co-pilot, Dee Dee Skies, and the Blue Falcon. But unfortunately, that was a large adult son who was related to the original Blue Falcon, because the large adult son was named Brian Crown. And later, just after Dynamite approaches and revealing the Blue Falcon's son, Brian. But unfortunately, the Air Mean Machine chases down at the Falcon Ferry, led by the evil supervillain Richard Medhouse Dick Dastardly. They want to get the treasure so he could get the skulls, but he wants to capture Shaggy and Scooby. But they escaped, which angers Dastardly, and blames one of the Rodents and replaced the head with the vacuum cleaner. And later, Dee Dee Skies explained that he has to collect 2 skulls before Dick Dastardly does, because their mission has to make sure he doesn't get the other 2. But they managed to go to the Gobi Desert, but unfortunately they ended up going to the abandoned carnival instead. And Dick Dastardly led the Rodents chase down the Blue Falcon, Dynamite, Shaggy, and Scooby. But and Dastardly introducing himself to Scooby-Doo, and Scooby called him Rick, which enraged Dastardly. But Scooby got away, as Shaggy and the Blue Falcon and Dynamite, and made it back to the Falcon Ferry. But later, the Blue Falcon gave a new suit for Scooby-Doo, but he has to remove the collar just this once for the mission. And Scooby likes the new suit, but which will lead to Shaggy very concerned. And later, the policewoman stopped ordering Fred to stop the van, and they revealed themselves as Dick Dastardly in disguise, and let one of the Rodents capture them and take into the Mean Machine, so that he can get Scooby-Doo for himself. And later, they escape from the cell and contact the Falcon Fury. He's headed to at the Stone Age island. And they had to get there immediately before Dick Dastardly does. But Dastardly found him and telling his backstory that how did he lost his partner in crime, Muttley, who was separated from Dick Dastardly when he ended up being trapped at the underworld, because Muttley was not the key. And the Rottens take him back to their cell, except Fred. He has big plans for him. When they arrived, Shaggy looked at Scooby going with Brian, Dynamut, and Dee Dee, which leads to jealousy, because he realized that Simon Cowell was right after all, because they don't count on friendship. And Scooby was devastated and heartwarming when he never had a fight with Shaggy before, and later he and Brian and Dee Dee and Dynamut met Captain Caveman, and they take him to his stadium where the people was at, and they are about to challenge Brian, and he fighting, and Captain Caveman battling Brian, and he finally realized he's no superhero, just as Dynamut reminded him. He realized he's no good at it. However, it's up to Scooby to do the challenge, but he ended up being beaten by Captain Caveman. And later Captain Caveman was defeated, and Shaggy found him, and Fred, and so as Fred, when unfortunately he kidnapped Scooby, but he revealed himself as Dick Dastardly in the fake Fred Jones disguise and pushes the real Fred and Velma and Daphne off to the Mean Machine airship. And however, the Falcon Ferry was destroyed by Dick Dastardly, and Brian blames Shaggy, and they ended up the fight with Fred Jones, but Shaggy immediately breaks up the friendship and blames himself for his fatal mistake he has caused due to his jealousy, since Simon Cowell was right after all, since friendship isn't going to save the day. And later his friends managed to help Shaggy undo his mistake to get Scooby-Doo back before Dick Dastardly does. Later, at the place, at his Greeks, the Mean Machine arrived at just the nick of time, and Dick Dastardly retrieved the free Cerberus skulls and transformed into the portals. And when the Mystery Machine arrived with the gang, and they ordering the Rottens to shoot it down, and that takes care of them. And later, he puts the paw on the opening gates, revealing the Cerberus, which caused chaos. And Dick Dastardly pretended to retreat, and he entering the underworld. And Scooby got them out, and Shaggy and the others were rescued at last. And later, Dusty was relieved to see Daphne and the others survive the crash, and the Rottens agreed to help him out, to help them save the day. And later, Dick Dastardly founded all the treasure that belongs to Alexander the Great. But unfortunately, he found Muttley lying motionless, and he sobbed because he was too late. And later, Muttley gets up and snickering, which angers Dastardly, and started the fight a little bit, but he didn't stay too angry for too long. He was overjoyed to see Muttley survived. And Shaggy and Daphne and the others managed to forming a plan to send the Cerberus back to the underworld. And Dynamut encouraging Brian that he has to be just like his dad, and pushed the button from his chest and reveals as the Falcon Wings, and he could fly, and he proved himself to be a superhero after all, and helped Shaggy and Scooby send the Cerberus, battling the Cerberus. But unfortunately, Dick Dastardly and Muttley escaped with the treasure from Alexander the Great, and the Rottens turned against them. And Shaggy and Scooby let the Rottens send the Cerberus back to the underworld and closed the gate immediately. However, and Shaggy was chosen to close the gates and sending the portal gates to disappear, leaving Shaggy trapped, which heartbreaks Scooby. But unfortunately, the statue appears and sends Shaggy back to the real world where he came from. Friendship really did save the day. And they were reunited together, and Scooby got his collar back, and the rodents betrayed Dick Dastardly and turning against him. And however, Shaggy removed the mask and revealed that Simon Cowell, but Velma didn't realize it doesn't make any sense. They cannot judge Simon Cowell for that, and also the mask was revealed as Dick Dastardly, because he was trying to fool them again. And the Falcon Fairy take Dick Dastardly and Muttley into hostage. And Shaggy and Scooby are the real heroes. And later, they return home and opening the business of the Mystery Inc. headquarters. And the Falcon Fairy still joined the grand opening on this special day and partying for today. And just then, they receive the news from the woman. There's ghosts. And Shaggy and Scooby is ready to go on a new mystery. And that's how the story concludes. And I'm very grateful and I'm very proud for the cast of SCOOB. But I was originally planning to see this in theaters in the summer of 2020. Unfortunately, that dream was cut short. But despite this, it was coming to theaters on May 2021 instead. So the best part is I did get to see that movie when I had the chance, just after I saw Tom and Jerry and Raya and the Last Dragon in 2021. So anyways, let me know in the comments and subscribe and let me know you have saw SCOOB in theaters back in 2021. This is David Alexander Villafrade Castillo, aka Minion Fan 1024, signing off. Scooby Dooby Doo!